Hello everybody, Gilligan Kruger 0829 here, and welcome to day 7 of my Harry Potter movie series marathon review. 7 days. So as you have all probably guessed by now, today we are looking at Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, the first movie in the two-part finale based off of J.K. Rowling's final book. Now, there's been a lot of anticipation for this movie ever since it was first announced that Deathly Hallows would be made into 2 feature films. But how exactly does the calm before the storm play out, you may ask? Well, let's take a look at Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. So this movie begins with 2 small events. The first being in which the new Minister of Magic, played by Bill Nighy, is addressing the Ministry and the Wizarding world by saying the Ministry will stay strong even with Voldemort's ascension and collecting of his army. The other small event is when Harry and Hermione are watching their families depart since they cannot be around them because it's unsafe. But the next scene we venture to the house of Lucius and Draco Malfoy, which has now become basically the main meeting place for all the Death Eaters, where Snape has informed Voldemort that Harry is leaving from his house to try to venture to a new location that night. The Order of the Phoenix appears to try to escort him to the Weasleys' house, but in the process they're attacked by Death Eaters. Only a few of them are killed, but the Death Eaters reappear and attack the wedding of Ron's older brother, Bill, later that night. In the confusion, unfortunately, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are separated from the rest of the Order and wind up in the streets of Great Britain. And the movie that follows is essentially Harry, Ron, and Hermione's quest to destroy the last pieces of Voldemort's soul, aka the Horcruxes, while they're running into obstacles in the forms of both their enemies and even each other. So, remember all those happy days of Harry Potter with the chocolate frogs, the Quidditch, and the whimsical score by John Williams? Forget those days, because they're essentially over. Harry Potter has taken a completely different turn into one of the darkest movies I have seen in the last decade. So much, even, I would say this movie is like The Dark Knight in the sense that, even though it's rated PG-13, it has several elements that would probably frighten children and even young teenagers the way certain R-rated horror movies would do. I think this so much that the movie is shadowed in such a dark feeling and look that if you watch this movie in the daylight with the lights turned on, even in the middle of the day with the blinds open, you won't be able to understand what's going on because you can't see it in some scenes. Does this hurt the movie, however? Absolutely not. In fact, I think it's the best entry in the franchise since Goblet of Fire in 2005. The story is very interesting, the characters act and are portrayed very strongly, and the effects, as always, are top-notch. The story in this one, again, isn't much of a mystery, but is more pushing you into the final part of the movie, kind of along the lines that Pirates of the Caribbean and Lord of the Rings 2 did, but it doesn't feel the same way, because although this story is dark and creepy, there is some points for tender moments here. Like, there's one scene in which Harry and Hermione are visiting Godric's Hollow, the place where Harry was born and his parents were murdered, and they're in the graveyard looking at the tombstone of James and Lily, and even though there's no dialogue between these 2 characters, other than they say Merry Christmas to each other since it's on Christmas Eve, there's something about this scene that is almost heart-aching, because you just look at Harry's expression and he's thinking, what would have happened if my parents were never murdered? And Radcliffe and Watson are so good in this one scene. It's, as I said, it's heart-aching to say the least. Of course, this is followed by the most frightening scene in the movie, probably the franchise so far, in which they're attacked by Voldemort's pet snake Nagini, which, by the way, would make the snake from Anaconda shiver in its burrow. And so once again, it mixes both sadness and darkness, and I really like that aspect of the movie. The characters, of course, still the focus is on Harry, Ron, and Hermione. In fact, the focus is more on them than any of the other movies, because they've matured now from teenagers to adults. And they definitely act this way, because there are some scenes where they fight amongst each other, and that's what I meant when I said obstacles in the form of each other. And I think this scene is good just because it portrays the way they've grown up in the series. And I could go on all day how much I like how these movies portray their maturing, how they've grown up with these movies, and so have we. And it's definitely good. I still hope for a very good list of movies for these characters after these ones are over. They're really good. This movie, I don't think is as special effects driven as the other ones, but when they do appear, they are very good. I think one of the most clever effects is, I'm not sure this technically counts as an effect, but there's a part towards the end of the movie where they have this really interesting animation of the origin of the Deathly Hallows, which is beautiful in a scary sort of way. And I think this is one of the best things about the whole movie. Just the way it's animated. You'll know what I am talking about when you see it, but the thing is, this movie works on so many levels. It stands alone as one of the highest points in this franchise, and definitely as a marvelous fantasy movie in itself. Now, the one gripe about the movie, as I've said in my last review, none of the Potter movies have been perfect so far, and this one is in its story, which occasionally I thought was a little bit slow moving, because I just felt like, okay, come on, move on. And over the period of 2.5 hours, which I've come to expect from these movies, it does kind of drag. But you know what? As I said, I've come to expect this stuff for the Harry Potter franchise. And my final viewpoint is that this is one of the best Harry Potter movies. In fact, my favorite entry since Goblet of Fire. It stands alone. It's a dark and compelling story, and definitely one of the great fantasy movies we've got in the last 10 years. So as such, I'm giving Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 4.5 stars out of 5. And I'm hoping to give one of the best reviews I've ever given to Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 tonight. You can find all my movie reviews on my YouTube channel. If you have a movie you'd like me to review, comment on this video or on my channel. Until next time, peace. Lumos!